So we've now got a presentation from Lizz Hallinga around Salesforce adoption. And this is really about trying to help end users get the support that they need to adopt the solutions that admins and other people and developers build in the Salesforce platform. So I'm going to hand over to Lizz to introduce herself and to take us through her presentation. Over to you, Lizz.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone from Michigan, which is the
you there, Lizz?
Oh, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought somebody. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. So greetings from Michigan, which is in the center of the United States. I live about, 2 miles from one of the largest Great Lakes in the region, so Lake Michigan. And but I'm formerly from Chicago, so I'm still an active WIT leader in Chicago, since Chicago's still my closest user group community, which is kind of funny because it's about a 2-hour drive, but that's okay. Us Americans are used to driving. So today I'm going to chat about user adoption. So let me pull up my presentation so that we can get started. All right. Oops. Oh, sorry, I did not want to insert. And can everyone see my screen now?
Yeah, we can see that.
Excellent. All right. So as admins, as consultants, I'm even going to push it to like developers, architects, everyone, like anybody who is, working on the Salesforce platform really does need to be adoption minded when it comes to what they're building and doing on the platform. I tend to see like a lot of admins and talk with a lot of admins about the tools, but that we're going to discuss today. But I think this applies to everyone, even some of the business analysts and people that maybe not necessarily building on the platform, but everyone should know what's available within the platform to be able to create success for the end users. So I'm just a little bit about me. I'm a Salesforce, now a Hall of Fame MVP, been pretty active in the community for a long time. I do a lot of teaching at a local community college for free to like upskill people on Salesforce, and have been involved in the WIT conferences and all that. I've spoken at Dreamforce, I think 7 times, but I have spoken at so many community events, even London's Calling, which I believe is next Friday, right? Thursday and Friday, or is it maybe it's just Friday, but I couldn't go this year because, well, I managed to score some Taylor Swift tickets, but I have been to London's Calling. It's one of my favorite community events, and I hope that next year I'll be able to go. And in fact, I talked about one of my favorite topics, change management. So all of this all comes together. So we'll just do a brief level set on what is adoption. And then we'll talk a bit about who is involved. And I already kind of gave you a little bit of a precursor to that. We'll just discuss some communication best practices. And then we'll also then jump into some tools within Salesforce where I'm going to pull up one of my demo orgs, and I'm going to show you simple things that you can do to start improving adoption within your org today. You can go back and try it out, some of it today. All right, so what is adoption? And I can't see the chat, but if anybody wants to take a pass at what adoption really means, I would welcome seeing that. Or if someone can read it out, you could speak it out even, because I can't see on my screen, unfortunately.
I would say it's getting users to use the systems that consultants and partners build for them.
Yes, that is part of it for sure. All right, I'll just dive right in. So the boring definition of it, because I think it's like people to adopt what we build is like the big thing, but it's truly a process, right? Of getting people to accept, and then accept the changes, integrate them, and then start using the technology as it was intended. And a lot of times we just jump right into like, well, they just need to use it. And we forget that this process of using any sort of technical platform is really a human process of people doing things. And so you sort of have to help them accept it and then integrate it. The acceptance thing can be a bit challenging, but that's part of the change management process. So when we think about like who is responsible for adoption, it really, and this is a mirror, it's all of us, right? So as I was saying before, like it's really anybody on the platform who is building, designing, analyzing, looking at, data, even looking at data, even their stakeholders. It's really anyone that's responsible for the platform or is building stuff. So ultimately, it falls on us, the builders, the admins, to ensure that we're being adoption minded. And it's not easy, right? Because a lot of times people are coming to you and they'll be like, hey, we're going to like change this account type. And they don't think about it. They're like, we just need to change it because like these stakeholders want it. And then the next thing you know, like there's all this downstream impact, right? Of lack of communication, and people didn't update their reports as a result of that change. And we've all been there, right? Where we've made a tiny change thinking it was going to be no big deal. And then all of a sudden it kind of blows up. I remember when one of my first roles as an admin, I deleted a field that the CEO's secretary used for her reporting, and it was a major no-no. Obviously, I was able to add that field quickly back in, but we just know that it falls on all of us to be responsible for this, whether it's the communication all the way through helping people adopt those changes if the changes need to be made. And ultimately, it's the stakeholders, right? And so referencing back to my little story about the secretary to the CEO at my former company, or my first real Salesforce full-time admin role, that you need to keep track of all your stakeholders. So this is probably the first step in any adoption strategy that you're doing. And whether you've been in your org for 5 years or you're just starting out in it, you need to build a stakeholder registry. So this is like level 1. You must know who's in the system. So you can start with the user list, right? And that's very helpful, but sometimes you don't always know who's consuming the data that's in the system because people may be sharing, reports and dashboards with people that, outside of the actual system. So it's important to think about to get their information, like their name, their functional area, what objects are they using? So for example, sometimes, you'll create custom objects and you'll be like, why did I create that custom object? And having that as part of like your stakeholder registry of who uses it will be helpful for you. Any processes that they're a part of, you need to document that. Are they part of an approval process? Are they, is it the legal department that gets involved in the master service agreements or contract review in the late stage of a pipeline? So it's understanding who, the area that they're in, the objects they use, and maybe which processes they're a part of. And then also important to understand which reports and dashboards they're regularly reviewing, and then also the communication preferences. This is work that, you're going to always be doing this. You're always going to be updating this, whether you use a custom object that you create in Salesforce or, you use a Google Sheet or an Excel file. This is something that you should start doing today. Even if you commit to like documenting one user today, do it. Just be like, okay, maybe you have the VP of sales that you want to put in your spreadsheet. Start to put the users in the spreadsheet, understand what they're doing and, how they sit in the organization. And I honestly, this will save you so much time and effort. If you do 1 or 2, areas a day, you could probably be done in 2 weeks or even a month, depending on how big your org is. But there's one takeaway from today outside of the technical stuff that I show you within Salesforce. It's just start to document your stakeholders and understand who they are. You could even I know some people even create like a survey out to them, and then they just send it out even quarterly or twice a year as a sort of the state of Salesforce survey to understand how they're using it. And it can lead to additional conversations if necessary, but sometimes just a survey will be beneficial enough. But this is one thing I'll share the slide deck after, but if you want to take a screenshot of this, start this today. Do at least one user to understand your stakeholders. Communication. So before we jump into the technical stuff, the one thing that you have to do is understand the communication preferences of your stakeholders. I know some people think like, oh, I gotta like do a newsletter or send updates, but really you have to just build this repository of change and almost like a knowledge base. So some people use tools for that, but you want to be able to track the history of your communication. So if you're on a regular cycle, for example, of if you're doing sprint cycles to put the changes into your system, I would start that communication cycle, maybe it's every other week or every 3 weeks, that you share with your stakeholders what changes you are making. I just recently, with one of my clients, started to do this about 3 months ago, and they have 1,000 users. And it's sort of like a storm stage because people are like, wait, you didn't tell me, or I didn't get included. But we're getting now to the normalization where they expect this regular communication from the Salesforce team. And it's really helped actually with some of the changes that they're trying to put through, because they're starting to be like, okay, we know now that this stakeholder is involved in the quote process. And if we're going to change anything to the quote object, we've got to let them know. So the stakeholder registry really like drives into the communication strategy that you will build. And it's not going to be perfect right away. You're going to, you will have some mistakes, and that's fine, but it's better to start creating an expectation within your stakeholders of how you will communicate with them, so that when change does happen, they are already like trusting and accepting of that method of communication. I have people that do newsletters or just send out emails, chatter posts, Slack updates. Some people will even do that along with storing the communications on like their SharePoint or their Google Drive, so that they become searchable for the end users in case there's like a quick reference guide of some of the changes they're making. But communication is key. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I've got a question, Liz.
Sure.
Are there any templates around for the kinds of things that you might do? Because often the hardest part of adopting something like this is knowing what to do and how to do it, and giving people a bit of a helping hand. So are you aware of any resources or templates that would help you?
So I can give like a stakeholder registry template for sure. In terms of communication, some people just do like simple newsletters, but I could dig up a couple that I've used and sort of remove client information from them and share with you all.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, we can post that to our chatter group. That would be super helpful. Thank you.
Let me just take that as an action item. I'll probably have it tomorrow.
Okay.
Just do communication. And the interesting thing I should say too, and we all are guilty of this, right? Like we get emails about updates or Slack messages, and we may ignore them. And that's very typical of your end users. They may ignore like, oh, we got this update about this field. They may not care about it until they actually have to use it. And that's where I do think that creating a place that's searchable, like using Slack or using Chatter for the communication, allows them to go back and be like, oh, wait, I did see something on that, because it's more of like helping your end users in the moment find what they need. And then we'll segue then into Salesforce, because there's things that you can do in Salesforce to help you help your end users. So we're going to talk a little bit about these 4 main things. So help text. All right. I know everybody is familiar, like help text has been around forever. But it is shocking that people still don't use help text. That's one of the first places you can use to like help support your end users, especially when you're doing a new field or something like that. So just a quick little overview of that. We'll talk about the help menu. The help menu, I don't know how many of you know this, but you can customize the help menu in Salesforce. And I'm always shocked that people don't know that. We have learning paths as well, which is I would say it's like a trail within Salesforce, because you can assign Trailhead modules and stuff like that, and URLs. And then we'll touch briefly on in-app guidance prompts. So I am going to switch over to my org. Now I can see all the questions. Sorry about that. I should have done like a dual screen. Okay. All right. So first things first, right? You come to your, let's look at accounts. And we could just look at my create adoption success and look at the details. Not too many help text items here. That's interesting. My org looks a little bit different right now. Where am I? Goes right into edit mode. Interesting. I could easily edit all of this, but all my help text has disappeared. Interesting. We'll have to add some. So let's go into setup and just add a field to my account object. So when you're doing help text, it doesn't have to stay that way forever, right? Like you can, set yourself calendar reminders if you're adding a new field to be like, I'm adding, this field, and we'll just say 100. The help text can be adding this field to help us better track assignments of accounts. And it could just be something simple in terms of language that you give to them to so that when they hover over it, they know that they should be looking at the help text for guidance on this particular field. I'll just hit next and save and add it to my page layout. So how many of you are actually using help text when you're adding your fields to Salesforce? I'm just curious, like, is it something that everybody does all the time? Or is it kind of like, oh yeah, only if I think about it, I do it?
I think it's something I do. I do it regularly, Liz, but I see other people, lots of other people that don't use that. They're so focused on getting the functionality in there that they forget the fact that somebody's going to use that ultimately, or may question why the field is called that, or what indeed that field is even for.
Right.
Anybody else in the room who uses that regularly? Yeah, a couple of hands.
Yeah.
But not every hand in the room.
I think quite a lot of looking at how much help text is used across the board, but it's pretty sparse. I've looked at 20, 30 different orgs working with that and analyze those, and it's 10% of the fields possibly, things like that. It's low volumes.
Yeah. And that's using the Elements Elements app. Yeah.
I've heard if you have that app, it's supposed to be super helpful. It is weird. All of a sudden, I was just in my org, and am I losing my mind that I can't?
Are you in the right org, Liz?
I am.
Sorry for the obvious question.
No, so we just added it. Added the help text, and maybe I just need to refresh it again. But I don't see. What's interesting is I'm not seeing the option on any of the fields. Do you all see that?
Yeah.
It's like the help text has disappeared completely. That is odd.
Text on the voice disappeared.
Yeah. And you know what you need to do, Liz? You need to switch to classic.
Right. I mean, it's so that I've not ever had that happen.
No, I've not seen that before either.
It's like and everybody knows what it looks like because it's a little icon on the page layout. It literally is. I don't know.
Go on, switch to classic. Give it a go.
No, I'm not doing that. Let me just. Oh, bizarre. Look at how everything looks like automatically can be edited. Oh, here we go. There's help text right here.
Right.
Isn't that interesting? I don't know. Anyway, there is help text because I've tested this before. So again, your future self will, will thank you if you add help text and the description. And sometimes you're going to duplicate description into help text, and that's not a big deal. it's just actually spending the time to do that is really beneficial. Okay. I am like over time. I'm so sorry. Let me.
That's okay. That's okay. Take your time. This is all good stuff, Liz.
Cool. All right. So the next thing that I wanted to share with you all is that you have the ability to customize help and training up here at the top under the question mark. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but this is a very handy tool. So you can like add resources like links to org charts or links to maybe the newsletters that you're doing or SharePoint. Anything that you want to add a link to, you can add this in setup. So I'll take you there so we can go to the help menu. Make sure first that it's on. And then you can change any of the company resources. So you can delete one, you can add a new one. It could be, usually it has to be some kind of link to a document. But it's a great way to, one, direct your end users if you have a knowledge base somewhere. So I have clients, I don't know about all of you, but they still love quick reference guides. And I also do a lot of quick little video recordings that are like less than 2 minutes on how to do certain things. So you can link to those resources here. And when you're training your end users, they can come to this and quickly get to where they need to go to find that content. So it's quite handy. And it's just a matter of just training them when you onboard them to be able to go find it. And you can add up to 30 resources here. I don't necessarily recommend doing 30, but you can. And it just really depends on what you need to accomplish. Oh, now we're getting an error. No, Salesforce is not liking me today. All right, I'm just going to leave that. But you are able to come in and update this. And so when you're talking with your stakeholders, if they're, maybe they're using, sometimes they'll even use like Seismic, or I have another company that uses Brainshark. They'll just create a little file folder link here to the Brainshark videos that they use for training. So very handy. So how many of you have used customizing the help menu before?
Not as often as I should. I think I've not done it recently, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very handy to do that. For most, it just helps when they're onboarding to get that just set. This is where you can go to quickly find internal resources. Obviously, they have all this other stuff, but you want them. The nice thing is that you can have your internal company resources front and center.
Yeah, and I think you used to be able to do that in Classic. On the side panel on the left, you could add links. So I guess they've taken that function and put that here, which makes sense. Yeah, it's good to learn something new.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll use rich text components for links as well. It just depends. So the other areas that you have the capability to assign learning paths in Guidance Center. So you've probably seen this pop up for you, especially if you're a new admin in an org. They'll come up with admin trail recommendations, but you can come in and assign learning content to your end users here. And this is a great tool for like sales leaders or service leaders that maybe want to share either modules or links within the system. So you have two options here. You can either assign a trailhead module or a link. So sometimes I'll just do, let me just do user experience and see what pops up. You can assign Salesforce Maps user experience. It can be for every app, every object. You can assign to all users, or you can assign to specific users or groups. So sometimes you'll do this, like maybe you'll create a list of modules for new end users. You can assign it, just to those specific people. And then you can have due dates or no due dates. So maybe I'm just going to do in 30 days. And then from here, you can go and see like your specific learning content, like what's in progress, what's been suggested, and then what's been completed in your org. So while there is still Trail Tracker that's out there, This one's kind of just a little bit easier because you can do it right from being within Salesforce without having to go through the somewhat cumbersome process of using Trail Tracker. I think long-term, this will be replacing Trail Tracker because it's just a lot easier to assign the modules. So I'm not sure how many of you have used this yet, but it is a fun way to share content. And then you can also use links as well when applicable. So sometimes sales leaders will say, oh, can you have them review this PDF of the sales process? And you can put it as a link within their learning content that they have to go through and review it. It does track it and you can do some reporting on it, but it's not necessarily like the most robust reporting yet, but it's getting there. They're constantly improving it. All right. Lastly, and this one's my favorite one, and this does sort of piggyback a little bit on the previous presentation. I know that David showed like their step-through guide. I would say that this is probably the precursor. Maybe this will help you determine your business case if you want to invest in a tool similar to theirs, is the in-app guidance prompts. Now, I think that these are still quite underutilized. So we have, first to get here, you go to your homepage and setup and you go to in-app guidance and always use the hyphen or else it won't pop up. And you get 3 free walkthroughs, but you also just get prompts. A lot of times I will use the prompts for a short amount of time for very specific things. Like I know that we've all been seeing the ones for MFA, but you can use these for, simple things like update to a pick list value or maybe a change in process. And you don't have to make it like this big thing that's going to last forever. It could be a very short-term tool to help you support the change or help your end users adopt the change that you're making. So for example, if I added a field, I would click add. Let's go to opportunities. And let me go to an actual opportunity because maybe I want to add one here. And I'll select add. So you have to navigate to the page where you want it. So I want mine to be on details. And I'm going to select add here. And I'm just going to do a single prompt. Walkthroughs are great for step-by-step processes, but those take a little bit of practice and some time. So I'm just going to do a single prompt. And you can have a floating, a docked, or a targeted. I like the targeted, especially when you're adding new fields. So maybe I want to do my targeted prompt on the new field announcement. Please use this field for X, Y, Z. You have the ability to link to additional information. So if you wanted to link out with the URL to maybe a white paper or document on it, you can add an image as well. Some people even do little video GIFs, which are awesome. And then you can do your button. Let's see. And hit save. Oh, it will. Yeah, I need to assign an element. It's not letting me assign the element. Scroll down a little bit. We'll just use this one. And next. So I always hit save before I finish. You can give it an action. This is optional. You can schedule it. So let's say I launch this new field and I just want to have this pop up for an entire month. You can just do that. Frequency is important. So I did have somebody want me to do something for 17 times, but you may want to do this maybe 4 times with, maybe 7 days in between each reminder and select next. If it applies to everyone, you can just use all the profiles. If you want to use specific profiles, you could come in and search for specific ones to add over. I'm going to select keep mine at no profile restrictions. And then you can also use permission sets to do this. So which type of permissions if necessary, and then the details. So I'm going to call this a test prompt. Always give it a description so you know why. And then you also have, there's always a shareable link. So if you need to share with somebody to review, you can do that. And now you can see the test prompt. I select done. And then if I go back to my screen and refresh, you'll see them added to the list here. But one thing that you can do that's handy is you can always preview your prompt. So it's nice, it'll take you back so that you can see how the prompt looks on the page layout. So this will be how your end users will see it. So it's quite helpful. I would start experimenting with it. You can run reports on it. There is reports and dashboards that you can download from the App Exchange. Salesforce Labs has a prompt engagement so that you can track and see the effectiveness of them. This is especially helpful if you're trying to build a business case, maybe for like a larger tool investment, to just see how people are reacting and responding to your prompts. All right, so I went over, I talked about overtime, and I apologize for that. Just some technical glitches, but we've talked about help text. So some of you are using it, some of you are not. Help menu, this is a great place to direct users to content outside of Salesforce if you've got videos or quick reference guides. Learning paths to help you set your end users on a path to learn different things within Salesforce, whether it's using Trailhead or internal URLs. And then lastly, in-app guidance prompts, which I would recommend you start using those today because you'll be able to start to measure the success of them and then refine them as you make changes to the system. So thanks, everyone. Any questions?
That's great. Thank you, Liz. Anybody got any questions for Liz?
I've just got one. I might have got behind the times here, but there's paths still a thing. Used to be, I don't know if you include it in this sort of adoption thing where I think you can take people on a particular path in the sales process or a service process. Is that still there?
Yeah, there's the path component exists, doesn't it? Go ahead,
Yes,
Liz.
the guidance for success. Yes, that is another underutilized tool. But you first have to set up path, and then hold on, let me just share my screen real quick. This is very helpful, and I think it's another underutilized feature because you have to first enable path, sales path. We can do this for any sort of path you have, but then guidance for success, it's pretty awesome. I mean, you can have key fields by stages show up here that you need them to focus on, and they can edit right from here.
Yeah, and you can also add in hints and tips into there as well.
Yes.
So for each stage or status, you can add what you want users to carry out within that particular stage. So that's still there.
And it sort of pushes you have to follow the path, basically, if you're in the cohort that's deemed in that sort of guidance. I seem to remember from a long time ago when I was
Yeah, you can skip stages depending on how it's set up. So you can jump, but at each stage, specific fields and a specific guidance.
It's like a guardrail, isn't it?
It is like a guardrail, yeah. It's just there, right there in front of you. So when you're on a particular stage, these are the fields you need to fill out, and these are the things that you need to do. I mean that's super helpful. Yeah, we're working with one customer at the moment where they've done that across nearly all of their objects, so that because the users are adopting a new system, they want to guide the user to say, these are things you need to do on this screen, and at each stage or status, whatever the object is, these are the key fields that you need to fill out. Yeah.
And I usually, because a lot of times people will come to me and they'll say, oh, like they're not filling in the data when I need it. And before I have them put validation rules on the system, I'll push them to guidance for success if they haven't used it yet, because we all know, like, too many validation rules can become kind of annoying for people. So it's my first approach is like, let's implement guidance for success and see where it goes with and how it aligns to your sales process. And then we can consider validation rules if that's like, a month or 6 weeks later, it's still not working.
Yeah, that sounds good. Great question, David. And anyone else got any questions? Thank you very much, Liz. That was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
I think we all learned something there. Thank you very much for that.